And Uganda is developing, and it will develop, because I don't entertain that nonsense anymore. I banned the export of minerals from Uganda.
Uganda has just done the unthinkable, banned all exports of unprocessed raw materials, from coffee and maize to gold and fish. No negotiations, no delays, just a full stop. Why would a country cut off its cash flow in a world that runs on exports? Let's find out. Uganda's dramatic decision to ban all raw material exports didn't come out of nowhere. It's not a bold gamble or a sudden experiment. It's the result of decades of quietly bleeding value, not because Uganda lacked resources, but because the global system was never designed for it to keep them. From the outside, it always looked like trade. Uganda grows crops or digs minerals, sells them to buyers abroad, earns foreign exchange, and uses that to import goods. On paper, it's economic activity. In practice, it was entrapment, because while Uganda exported things, it was exporting power. Let's take one simple example: coffee. Uganda is among the top 10 coffee producers in the world. Yet if you walk into a cafe in London, Berlin, or New York and order a cappuccino, the odds that Uganda's name appears anywhere on the packaging or profits are near zero. The beans may have started in Uganda, but the branding, the roasting, the marketing, the retailing, all the money-making steps happen somewhere else. Uganda got cents per kilo. The West got millions. This isn't an Ugandan problem. It's a system problem. One where Africa remains the basement of the global economy, providing raw input while watching the wealth climb upward, floor by floor, in other countries' industries. And the trap wasn't accidental. It was engineered. Colonialism didn't just take land, it planted patterns. When the British built railways in Uganda, they weren't connecting Ugandans. They were connecting inland resources to the nearest port. The entire infrastructure was designed not for national unity or regional commerce, but for extraction. Even after independence, the same logic persisted. Aid agencies, global banks, and trade partners kept pushing the narrative. Focus on what you're good at, raw exports. They called it comparative advantage. But in reality, it was a prison. Because what happens when you can only trade rawness in a world that pays for refinement? You lose. And Uganda has lost, over and over again. Every time it shipped out fish that could have been canned locally. Every time its gold left as dust instead of bullion. Every time its cotton was spun in Europe instead of Kampala, Uganda forfeited billions in potential income. Not because it didn't work hard, but because the world only rewarded finished value and punished those who didn't reach the finish line. What Museveni just did is not an overreaction. It's a reckoning. It's Uganda walking out of a rigged game and saying, "We're not playing anymore unless the rules change." And this isn't just economics, it's identity. For too long, Ugandans have watched their country function as a source, not a brand. Its name rarely appears on the labels of global goods, even when the goods begin in its soil. The ban is also a cultural correction. It's about reclaiming authorship, saying, we are not just where resources come from, we are where value is created. Of course, refusing to export raw materials is risky. Uganda knows it's stepping on the toes of powerful international buyers who prefer cheap input and no questions asked. But sometimes a nation must burn bridges, not to retreat, but to make sure it never goes back. The ban wasn't about closing doors. It was about forcing new ones to open, ones that lead to factories, innovation labs, processing plants, branding firms, and export systems run by Ugandans, not foreign middlemen. Uganda is no longer asking, who will buy our crops? It's asking, why haven't we been selling our finished products? Because the real question isn't about trade, it's about transformation. And that transformation starts with ownership, not just of resources, but of the entire chain of value that surrounds them. So, if this ban is the spark, what's the fuel? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Once Uganda decided to stop exporting its wealth raw, it found itself staring at a deeper question. What now? Because banning exports doesn't magically create industries. If you close the old path, you must carve a new one. And for Uganda, that new path is paved with value addition. But this isn't just about factories or machines. It's about finally answering the question, what does a Ugandan economy built by Ugandans look like? To understand the magnitude of this shift, imagine this. For generations, the Ugandan economy functioned like a loading bay. Goods came in from farms and mines and were shipped out as fast as possible. Now, the entire model is being flipped. Instead of speeding goods to the port, Uganda is trying to hold them in place to process, refine, package, and brand them before they ever leave. And this is not just economics, it's architecture, a national redesign. Let's take cotton. In the old system, cotton was picked, weighed, baled, and exported. The money came back in foreign currency, and Uganda waited for the next season. But in the new system, that same cotton could be spun into thread in Jinja, woven into fabric in Kampala, dyed and styled into Ugandan fashion labels, and only then exported. The difference in profit margins isn't incremental, it's explosive. Uganda earns not only from the raw cotton, but from every single layer of transformation that touches it. And cotton is just one material. Apply that to coffee, fish, gold, maize, timber, bananas. The results are staggering. But here's the deeper truth. Uganda is not doing this just to make money. It's doing it to control the narrative. You see, when you export raw goods, the story belongs to someone else. When a Ugandan coffee bean ends up in a Parisian cafe, the consumer sees a French brand, a European logo, maybe an Italian roast. Uganda is invisible. But when you roast and brand it locally, when the final product says Kampala roast or Pearl Arabica, you're not just exporting a product. You're exporting identity. And identity sells. Ask Ethiopia. Their coffee branding gave them global recognition. Ask Ghana, which is finally moving into chocolate production. These countries are proving something Uganda now understands. Value is not just in what you grow, it's in how the world sees what you've made. To make this happen, Uganda isn't betting on just state control or investor miracles. It's triggering a private sector race. Entrepreneurs, cooperatives, agro-industrialists, they're all being invited to build the new Uganda. The government's role? To remove roadblocks, provide power, ease taxes for local manufacturers, and open doors to regional and continental markets. This also means the financial sector must evolve. Traditional banks in Uganda, accustomed to lending on short-term trade cycles, are now being challenged to support long-term industrial ventures. A farmer who once needed a loan to move crops now needs financing to build a small-scale processing plant. That's a leap, and one Uganda must be ready to support with risk buffers and incentives. But perhaps the most radical idea in all of this isn't in the boardrooms or factories. It's on the farms. Because for this industrial ecosystem to work, farmers must stop seeing themselves as just producers. They need to see themselves as suppliers to an internal economy. The maize farmer is now part of a flour mill's supply chain. The fish catcher is now part of a packaging line. The coffee grower is now feeding a national roasting industry. The language of agriculture has to evolve, from yield and price to integration and ownership. This is not easy. It's not fast, but it is necessary. Uganda has made a decision that many African countries are too afraid to make. We will no longer be useful if it makes us powerless. It's better to build slow and strong than to sell fast and stay weak. So now the question is, how do you prepare a nation, not just logistically, but psychologically, for this kind of transformation? You can build all the factories in the world, install the best machines, pour concrete, wire up generators, and hang "Made in Uganda" signs on every warehouse wall. But if you don't have the people who know how to run, repair, manage, market, and expand those industries, you don't have an economy. You have expensive furniture. This is the critical phase of Uganda's new path: human capital transformation. After shutting off the tap of raw exports and laying the groundwork for a domestic value ecosystem, Uganda is now staring at the most complex challenge of all: preparing its people to own and operate that ecosystem. Because you can't just switch from farmer to food technologist overnight. You can't expect a miner to suddenly become a metallurgy expert. And you can't build a high-value economy with a low-skill mindset. So the question now is, who will build this new Uganda? To answer that, the country must first confront a brutal truth. Its workforce wasn't trained for this future. Uganda's education system, like many in post-colonial Africa, was shaped to produce clerks, civil servants, and low-level technicians, functionaries for an external economic system. It wasn't built to produce industrial innovators. The curriculum prepared students to write reports, not to invent packaging systems, run export logistics, or oversee food safety laboratories. But that's changing, fast. Vocational training is being reborn across the country. In places like Mbale, Gulu, and Fort Portal, new technical institutes are popping up, focused not on dusty theory but on practical, industry-aligned skills. From agro-processing techniques and quality control to machine operations and digital branding, Uganda is finally training its young people not to wait for jobs, but to build value with their own hands. But it's not just about new institutions. It's about changing the mindset. For too long, many young Ugandans were conditioned to believe that success meant leaving the country, working in a bank, or chasing degrees abroad. But now the government, private sector, and media are collaborating to rewrite that story. Skilled work is not backup, it's nation building. A fruit dryer in Masaka is just as valuable to the country's future as a diplomat in Geneva. This mindset shift is especially vital in rural areas, because if Uganda is truly going to industrialize, it won't happen from the capital outward. It has to happen from the villages inward. Farmers, fishers, and miners must be trained not just in extraction, but in preservation, processing, packaging, and profit. That's where partnerships come in. Uganda is now working with development agencies and Pan-African institutions to connect local knowledge with global expertise. The aim? To avoid the trap many industrializing nations fall into, building industries that are forever dependent on foreign technicians. Instead, Uganda wants to produce its own food scientists, product designers, supply chain analysts, and export negotiators. In places like Lira and Arua, pilot programs are already showing results. Young entrepreneurs are turning mangoes into pulp, cassava into flour, and fish into vacuum-sealed delicacies for regional markets. They're not just producing, they're innovating. And they're doing it in Luganda, in Swahili, in Runyankole, not because they're resisting English, but because industrial pride must be rooted in cultural ownership. But there's another angle too, one that's often ignored: women. Uganda's raw material economy never worked without women. They harvested, sorted, carried, dried, and washed. But they were rarely seen as stakeholders. That's now changing. Many of the most promising agro-processing projects in Uganda today are female-led. And the government is pushing for more: microcredit for women-led cooperatives, land reforms that guarantee processing rights, and training programs that prioritize female entrepreneurs. Because if the future is truly national, it has to be inclusive. Still, this push for skills isn't just about filling today's gaps. It's about preparing for a global economy that changes faster than Uganda can build roads. AI, climate science, blockchain logistics. Uganda needs to train not just workers, but thinkers, creators, and disruptors. That means reshaping universities, linking research labs to real-world problems, and ensuring that no bright mind is lost to poverty or policy failure. And once Uganda has the skills, that's when the world will start to notice. Because it's not enough to produce something. You need to be able to sell it, compete, win. And in a world built by gatekeepers and trade barriers, Uganda must now prepare for its next battle. Not just making products, but fighting for markets. You'd think that producing something of value would be enough. If Uganda creates high-quality roasted coffee, fruit pulp, packaged fish, or polished gold, it would naturally find eager buyers abroad. But this isn't how the global economy works, because global trade isn't a free race, it's a rigged obstacle course, and the referees are often the ones who stand to lose the most if Uganda wins. Here's the catch. For decades, Uganda's role was simple: export cheap raw materials to richer countries that refined, branded, and sold them back to the world. Those richer countries developed entire industries, jobs, and empires around those raw inputs. Now imagine telling them, "We're keeping it. We'll process it ourselves. We want to sell the final product." It's not just disruptive, it's dangerous to their business models. And so the response from the global market isn't a fair handshake, it's resistance. Trade barriers, safety certifications. Uganda never had to meet when it was exporting raw goods. Rules about packaging, storage temperatures, chemical traces, and documentation. all designed with the established powers in mind. It's called non-tariff protectionism, and it's how powerful countries protect their domestic industries while claiming to support free trade. For example, a Ugandan company that wants to export processed pineapples to the European Union might face dozens of hidden hurdles, from pesticide trace limits Uganda didn't even test for, to barcode and traceability systems most local exporters can't afford. Systems most local exporters can't afford. These aren't accidents, they're filters, and Uganda is now learning just how thick those filters are when you try to rise the value chain. So, how does Uganda respond? Not by begging, but by shifting alliances and rewriting rules. First, Uganda is deepening its commitment to regional and continental trade frameworks, especially the African Continental Free Trade Area (AFCFTA), which offers a $3.4 trillion market built by and for Africans. This is critical because it allows Uganda to scale up regionally before jumping into the deeper waters of Western-dominated trade. Imagine this: a product perfected in Kampala, exported to Nairobi, tested in Kigali, expanded to Accra, and only then pitched to Berlin. That's the strategy. Master the continent before confronting the empire. Second, Uganda is actively pursuing South-South partnerships with countries like India, Brazil, Turkey, Indonesia, and especially China. These nations, while still competitive, often offer more pragmatic trade relationships, lower regulatory hurdles, and, crucially, a shared interest in breaking Western monopolies. But Uganda isn't just relying on diplomacy. It's also investing in trade intelligence, knowing what markets need, which certifications to chase, what digital platforms to join, and how to tell Uganda's story in a way that lands. Because here's another truth: branding is power. Uganda's processed goods must not just be good, they must look good, be trusted, be celebrated. In the same way, Swiss chocolate, Italian leather, or Japanese electronics signal status, Uganda must now build its narrative, one that says, our quality is world-class, and yes, it came from Africa. This is why Uganda's Ministry of Trade is partnering with private sector players to rebrand export identity. From packaging design to storytelling, Uganda is learning how to sell not just a product, but a perception. Because in today's world, perception moves faster than price. But even with new markets, clever branding, and smart strategy, there's one thing Uganda must always be ready for: retaliation. Powerful corporations, exposed to losing their grip on African raw inputs, may use trade lawyers, lobbyists, or even misinformation campaigns to undermine Uganda's rise. It's already happened in other countries that tried to climb the ladder. So Uganda's rise must also include defense mechanisms, legal expertise, digital monitoring, diplomatic muscle, and local media capable of pushing back against sabotage narratives. Uganda is not entering a free market. It's entering a contested battlefield. But now it's armed, not with just products, but with purpose, strategy, and a new economic identity. Now that Uganda is carving a path into global markets, fighting past trade gatekeepers, building its brand and asserting control over its value chain, it faces a dilemma that few nations confront at this stage of development. How do you grow without repeating the sins of those who came before you? Because let's be honest, the countries that dominate today's economy didn't get there clean. They bulldozed forests, poured waste into rivers, ran factories on coal, and turned carbon into capital. Their prosperity came at the expense of the planet. And now, as Uganda prepares to industrialize, those same nations, now dressed in green policy suits, dare to preach sustainability. But Uganda isn't falling for hypocrisy. Instead, it's choosing to go where very few developing nations have dared to go. Industrialize with intention. Expand, but with balance. Build, but not burn. This is not just about climate. It's about long-term survival. Because what's the point of creating jobs in food processing if the soil becomes barren? What's the use of mining gold if the water turns toxic? Uganda knows that if it wants to lead Africa into a new era, it must do it without collapsing its ecosystem. That's why the country is now aligning its economic transformation with a bold and unexpected pillar: climate-conscious capitalism. The clearest sign? In early 2025, Uganda launched its first national carbon market regulations, a move that shocked many observers who expected climate leadership to come from Europe, not East Africa. But Uganda is flipping that assumption. Instead of waiting to be policed by global environmental watchdogs, it's building its own rules and attracting investors who are tired of dirty deals in clean sectors. These carbon regulations are more than legal documents. They're part of a green value proposition. Uganda isn't just offering labor and land, it's offering clean credibility. A processed food product made in Uganda won't come with an invisible environmental price tag. A mineral refined in Uganda will come with a paper trail of eco-compliance. This is about making sustainability a selling point, not a burden. And it's already influencing how local industries operate. New factories in Uganda are being designed with solar integration. Agro-processing centers are experimenting with biogas. Coffee roasters are using energy-efficient dryers. And most impressively, some industrial parks are being mapped as circular economies, where one industry's waste becomes another's raw input. But climate action doesn't just mean carbon. It means people. It means land. It means justice. Which is why Uganda's land use reforms are quietly revolutionizing the countryside. Instead of pushing industrial development into sensitive ecosystems or displacing rural communities, the government is encouraging climate-smart zoning, placing agro-processing hubs near existing farming communities, reducing transport emissions, and empowering farmers to be production partners, not casualties of it. This model turns local economies into resilient clusters, where employment, education, energy, and environment all reinforce each other. It's slower than the extractive model, but infinitely stronger. Because while quick growth impresses economists, lasting growth changes lives. And Uganda wants the latter. It also wants ownership. And that includes intellectual ownership, developing green technologies, testing climate-resilient crops, and investing in local climate researchers who can create solutions based on Ugandan realities, not imported models. There's even a move to integrate climate education into vocational programs, ensuring that future industrial workers don't just know how to process maize, but how to do it cleanly, profitably, and in harmony with the land that feeds them. What's emerging is a new vision for what it means to be a developing country. Uganda is proving that development doesn't have to look like smokestacks and oil spills. It can look like solar roofs, women-run processing hubs, eco-packaged exports, and community-owned energy grids. And perhaps most importantly, it's proving that you can say no to exploitation and yes to prosperity at the same time. This is no longer just a national project, it's a blueprint for the continent. Because if Uganda succeeds, if it manages to grow strong industries, skilled workers, global exports, and a green economy without falling into the traps of pollution, debt, or dependency, then it won't just rewrite its future. It will rewrite the rules of development itself. Do you think this was much needed? Should other nations do the same? Let us know in the comment section. Should they learn from Uganda? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.